This is Fox 43 News at 10.
The stakes get higher every year, but is enough being done to protect horses competing for larger and larger purses at racetracks all across the country? Good evening. In November, a federal grand jury indicted 4 people at Penn National Racecourse in Dauphin County.
They're accused of improperly doping horses and giving bettors inaccurate information. Since then, Fox 43 has been digging into the drug culture in horse racing. Fox 43's Michael Hyland talked with a variety of people in the industry and lawmakers. And Michael, many of them say that this problem is much more pervasive than people even realize.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point that some lifelong owners, people who follow the rules, fear there won't be a racing industry in 20 years because people are destroying it. They feel like things can change, but it won't be easy. It's known as the sport of kings. For 2 minutes, it's a high adrenaline, high stakes sprint to the finish line. But it's what happens before the starting gate opens that has raised questions not just about the fairness of the races, but the safety of the horses and their jockeys. Did you believe you were helping the horse in that situation? In November, a federal grand jury indicted 4 people at Penn National Racecourse. They accused 3 trainers of doping horses and a track employee of lying about how the horses performed in workouts. All said they're not guilty and are awaiting trial. Penn National banned them from the track. A spokesman called them a few bad apples. But many industry insiders Fox 43 talked with say the case highlights a much bigger problem.
His name is Ghost Pines.
Gretchen Jackson is a well-known horse owner who's been involved in racing for decades.
And it is all Barbaro!
She owned Barbaro, who won the Kentucky Derby in 2006.
Barbaro! I believe he's being pulled up!
Only to shatter his leg during the Preakness 2 weeks later. He never recovered and was put down after several months.
Look at him, he likes you.
Since then, she's become an advocate for safety and integrity in horse racing.
What's life if it's all phony?
Since the early 90s, the average purse per race in Pennsylvania has quadrupled to over $28,000, propped up by casino gaming.
People are paying a huge amount of money for horses, and it becomes pressure, and they've spent too much.
Jackson says regulators are struggling to keep up, as some trainers find new ways to give their horses the winning edge. The New York Times analyzed 3 years of data and found on average 24 horses die every week at tracks across the country.
I've heard everything from aspirins to Viagra, frog juice, venom.
That's cobra venom. Bettors know what's going on. A recent survey by the Jockey Club found nearly 8 in 10 committed bettors consider illegal drug use when they bet at certain tracks.
And they'll say things like, I'm not betting on that horse because his trainer is a druggie, or they'll say, I'm betting on it because the trainer has the right juice.
The overuse and abuse of medication is rampant at our thoroughbred racetracks and training centers.
This is video of Dr. Kate Papp, a veterinarian based at Penn National, testifying before a congressional committee in 2012.
It is not uncommon for me to see on race day a practitioner enter a stall in one of the private barns or the detention barn with 3 to 10 syringes full of medication to administer and not be questioned by anyone.
So where's the oversight? Pennsylvania has 2 commissions that oversee horse racing. They're both part of the Department of Agriculture. But this year they nearly ran out of money because the laws that determine their funding haven't been updated in about 30 years.
The ag budget's been cut the last several years and the funding comes out of the ag budget, so they just literally actually got to the point where they couldn't rob Peter to pay Paul anymore.
State Senator Elder Vogel chairs the Agriculture Committee and is trying to reform the industry, which supports about 20,000 jobs statewide. He wants to scrap the 2 commissions entirely and give the state's Gaming Control Board oversight instead.
It's the #1 issue, basically. I mean, because you have no integrity, you have nothing. If we start losing, that, you start losing jobs too. We don't want to have that happen either.
He wants to increase penalties and fees and have owners pay for drug testing instead of the Department of Agriculture. According to the Racing Medication and Testing Consortium, every month at least 1 trainer in PA is penalized for improper drug use. But Jackson says the fines and suspensions are too lax.
They're not really tough punishments. They're not tough enough.
She wants to see meaningful changes in this industry she loves. Otherwise, she fears it and more horses won't survive.
It won't last 20 years. It really won't. People can't go on like this.
We've been trying for several weeks to obtain documents from the Department of Agriculture to see how well the rules are being enforced on a case-by-case basis. We just got those documents today, about 400 pages we're going through, and we're going to sit down with the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Agriculture to talk about this issue this week. But first, new tomorrow night, one of our local congressmen is trying to get a zero-tolerance policy on race day drugs and medications. So he's going to explain why he calls the industry an embarrassment around the world and what he plans to do about it.
The problems with drugs in horse racing have gotten so bad that one congressman says that we are an embarrassment to the world. In November, a federal grand jury indicted 4 people at Penn National Racecourse in Dauphin County.
Last night we showed you the concerns about how widespread drug abuse has become. Tonight, why improving oversight in Pennsylvania alone may not be enough. Fox 43's Michael Hyland joins us now with a look at the call for change.
Yeah, one of our local congressmen is behind this effort, and he says it's necessary to save the horses' lives. But some people in the racing industry claim that the drug problem is being blown out of proportion. The way horse racing is run today is not like it was when Gretchen Jackson bought her first racehorse back in the 70s.
It was a closer, more intimate relationship with the trainer of the horse. Now it's so removed and it's become, like everything else, a little bit commercial.
Her horses have raced across the country and all over the world, but the rules in the U.S. when it comes to drugs are much different.
A lot of these drugs that they're giving them to help them mask huge problems.
We're among the minority of countries where it's okay to give horses a drug called Lasix on race day. It's a diuretic meant to help horses whose lungs bleed because they run so hard. There are rules about how close to race time horses can receive Lasix.
They can lose up to 40 pounds.
Veterinarians are supposed to be the ones administering it, but that doesn't always happen. In an effort to make their horses more competitive, some trainers drug the horses themselves. That's what federal prosecutors allege Trish Rogers did when she was found with loaded and unloaded syringes and bottles of medication last year at Penn National Racecourse.
The industry, frankly, is an embarrassment to the rest of the world. The rest of the world has zero tolerance of race day medication.
Congressman Joe Pitts represents part of Lancaster County. He sponsored a bill to phase out race day medications and give oversight of the industry to the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency.
The United States is where the problem is, and we have 24 horses a week being put down.
The day before the arrests at Penn National, Pitts held a hearing on the bill in Washington. Philip Hanrahan, the head of the National Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association, testified. He said the drug problem is a misperception due to sensationalism in the public media.
The NHBPA opposes its enactment because it attempts to address a problem that does not exist.
He argues Lasix makes horse racing safer.
Lasix is a very effective drug in preventing bleeding in horses, and that protects the horse and in turn protects the jockeys.
The head of the state-level association declined our request for an interview, but he says trainers worked with Penn National to establish its Lasix program. Further, he says security protocols his organization put in place helped to catch 2 of the people the feds indicted.
The whole practice is outrageous.
Pitts says the hodgepodge of rules and regulations from state to state has made it too difficult to police the industry.
If we were able to get a policy similar to what is utilized in other countries, you know, this pressure probably would go away.
Nobody seems to agree on anything. So hopefully this will bring us all together and we can run a clean ship.
While Congressman Pitts' bill has 20 co-sponsors, there are no votes scheduled on it yet.
This is Fox 43 News at 10.
Good evening. All this week, we've been taking a close look at drugs in horse racing. Safety advocates are calling for various reforms, saying the lives of the horses and the riders are in jeopardy.
But would tougher punishments actually be enforced? Fox 43's Michael Hyland talked with the people responsible to find out.
From caffeine to morphine, trainers have tried a wide variety of drugs and medications to help their horses across the finish line.
We have one of the top 3 laboratories for equine toxicology within the country.
Matthew Meals is a deputy secretary with the Department of Agriculture. The department oversees the state's horse and harness racing commissions.
Detecting these drugs, making sure that we're using the best and sound research available out there for these, and we continue to move forward in that.
But what happens once the drugs are detected? The Racing Medication and Testing Consortium tracks drug cases all over the country. In the first half of last year, thoroughbred trainers in Pennsylvania faced fines anywhere from $250 to $1,500 and loss of purses. One was also suspended for about 3 months. Fox 43 wanted more information about how the Horse Racing Commission handled recent cases. We filed a right to know request and received about 400 pages of documents detailing all appeals brought to the commission between October 2011 and September of last year. Of the 23 cases we reviewed, 7 involved horses injected with drugs at Penn National Racecourse in Dauphin County and parks near Philadelphia. Penalties varied based on the drug involved and included some combination of loss of purses, suspensions, or fines. In one case at Parks, a horse called Fuse the Opportunity tested positive for a drug called tamoxifen. It's an anti-cancer agent used to treat breast cancer and is not approved for use in horses. Punishment guidelines for the trainer called for a minimum of a 15-day suspension and a $500 fine. He only got the suspension. Even after getting less than the recommended minimum punishment, the trainer appealed his case to the Horse Racing Commission here at the Department of Agriculture. The commission reviewed the case and upheld the decision, keeping the suspension and no fine. If there are trainers not even getting the minimum recommended punishments, how is the message being sent to these trainers to behave well?
Well, I think we need to really look at that case. I'm not familiar with the exact case you're looking at. We continue to enforce to the best of our ability, and without looking at the specifics, there may be situations outside of the Commission's control of why that was not forced at the minimum.
Meals points out the state's horse racing laws have not had any significant updates since 1981.
We need to fix the 2 major problems, and that's the funding model that we currently have for our commissions, and also the regulatory statutes that we have to work within.
Commissions were expected to run out of money before state lawmakers stepped in last fall. State Senator Elder Vogel wants to eliminate the horse and harness racing commissions and give the Gaming Control Board oversight instead. He also wants increased penalties and fines.
Overall, you need more independent oversight, which is why I think putting everything under the Gaming Control Board is a good first step.
But safety advocates like Gretchen Jackson point out it's only one step of many needed to restore the sport's integrity.
It's up to the human beings, the trainers, the owners, to stick up for the horse.
That's really the foundation of starting to rebuild this industry.
In Harrisburg, Michael Hyland, Fox 43 WPMT.